My sister mistreated me for years. Now they're forcing us to reconcile.
I force you. I cast reconcile.
I, 46 female, and my sister, 42 female, have always had a complicated relationship. But for the last 8 years, it's been a nightmare, at least for me and for my parents, mom 69, dad 73. By the way, this comes from chapter new 7916, and if you want to submit your own stories, go to r/okstorytime subreddit. So, for context, my mom's family is a large one and very well knit. We are 16 cousins plus spouses and children, aunts, and uncles, about 63 people in total. We've always been there for each other, from going to school together to supporting each other through good times and bad. We celebrate everything together and we grieve together. It's not the usual family dynamic, but that's how it is. My relationship with my sister has never been great. She's always made remarks about my appearance and body shamed me. I didn't handle it well as a teenager, and I resented her a lot for it. Whenever I tried to talk to my parents about anything, she would talk over me, making sure she was the only one heard. She always managed to be the center of attention, and I resented her for it. I know it sounds childish on my part, but I couldn't stand her entitled behavior. And the fact that my parents never corrected her made it worse. Here's an example that keeps running through my mind. It may not be the best, but it gives you an idea of what I mean. When I got married 20 years ago, I had a small ceremony with just our immediate families and a few friends. 125 people in total. Small for our family. My sister was 22 at the time and insisted on giving me a present, which seemed sweet. However, I only asked her for the one thing, not to give me anything cross-stitched, as I don't like it. Guess what my gift from her was? If you guessed a cross-stitched item, you're right. She made a huge show of giving me a framed cross-stitch piece in front of everyone. I was livid, but I didn't want it to ruin my day. I thanked her, though not in the best way, and moved on. Before leaving, my mom told me I had been very ungrateful for the beautiful, hard-working present my lovely sister had made for me. I never apologized to either of them. Sometime later, my sister met her then boyfriend and started behaving as if everyone was against her because she was spending so much time at his house. Our parents didn't like it much. One evening, she called us crying, saying she had a fight with our parents about her absences and threatened to run away. We told her to wait and that we would come get her, but suddenly everything was fine and we didn't need to come anymore. Turns out everything was a lie. Who could have guessed? Time went on, and one day, she and her boyfriend came over to announce they were getting married. Great news, right? Well, that was the beginning of the nightmare. As we were discussing the wedding, she said, "You know, when I have my own children, you'll realize that mine will outshine yours. They will take first place as the most significant children."
That's toxic.
I was livid. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Thanks to my SO, I managed to keep my composure. How, I still don't know. Then came the wedding planning. As I mentioned, my family celebrates everything together, but not this time. She was adamant about not inviting any family members. Here were her reasons. First, she claimed she didn't have the money. My mom and I told her that wasn't a problem. Our parents would pay for the entire family to attend. Then it wasn't about money anymore. She said she was thinking of me because our female cousins, who she considers stunning, would overshadow me, especially since I had gained weight after 2 pregnancies. That's messed up of her to say. When that didn't work, she claimed she knew I didn't like one of our cousins and was sparing me from dealing with them. This was completely untrue. She just didn't want to invite the whole family. By this time, my mom was begging me to keep quiet and tried to convince my sister that inviting the family was important to avoid causing a rift. I did everything I could to persuade her, but she didn't care. Months later, she invited me to go wedding dress shopping. When I arrived, she was alone. She hadn't even told our mother to come. I was already at my wit's end. She had already chosen her dress, and as the sales lady was fitting it, she asked about a veil. My wonderful sister then said, "I'm going to wear that one," pointing at me.
What?
"Were you wearing a veil?"
What? Wait, what?
I was stunned. I told her no. She didn't take it well, but the sales lady saved me by saying that if my wedding dress wasn't the same shade of white, it wouldn't match. Okay, yeah. So
So
he's
she
also
was
trying
wearing
on
a wedding dress as
I
well.
think they're both trying on wedding dresses.
Skip that part.
Yeah, I didn't.
I just thought pointed at you and was like, "You
I
will be
want
the
that
veil."
one. Yeah.
No, not me. They just take you into the back into the veil folding machine and they just process you into a wedding veil.
So terrifying. Then my sister demanded that I give her my godmother's medal because she wanted to wear it for the wedding. I couldn't take it anymore. I shouted that there was no way in heck she was taking it. It was the only thing I had left from my godmother, who had passed away just months after my wedding. I couldn't believe she wanted to include the passed away in her wedding, but not the living. I was exhausted and devastated. I called my mom, explained everything, and told her where we were. Wait, you've already had your wedding, it seems.
Why were you wearing your dress at the dress fitting? Did she tell you to do that?
What? She didn't care. The amazing shop assistant managed to get her mom to come later that afternoon to see the dress. But for me, everything was tainted with grief. Cried the whole afternoon when I got home. As the wedding approached, my sister decided that our grandmother, who was in a wheelchair and not well, had to be there. She told our aunt, who lived with Granny, that Granny should come, but without inviting the rest of the family. My aunt, who is sharp as a knife, wasn't having it. She told my sister, if you want Granny there, you'll have her. But where my siblings and nephews and nieces aren't welcome, I'm not going, so it's up to you. This, of course, enraged my sister. Somehow, everything was suddenly my fault. Family members started calling me to berate me for my sister not inviting them. Apparently, it was my job to fix the situation, as if I had any say in it. I cried myself to sleep every night. The stress drove me into depression. The wedding day arrived. I had an excruciating backache from the stress and was on medication. I only managed to attend the ceremony at the town hall. When my mom arrived with Granny, we realized there was no accessible entrance. My SO and other guests had to carry Granny's wheelchair up a long flight of stairs. On the bride's side, only my parents, Granny, me, my SO, and my 2 kids sat. Meanwhile, the groom's side was packed, around 120 guests. It was the saddest wedding I've ever attended. My mom and I cried through the entire event.
What? If that's the disparity, don't separate the wedding parties.
Yeah.
What are you doing? If one party has 8 people, the other has 120,
just combine
make them all sit together.
Why would you do that?
That's crazy. That's one of the craziest things I've ever heard.
After the ceremony, my SO realized there must be a disabled entrance. He contacted the police, who were authorized to open it so Granny could leave safely without risk of falling. The restaurant was another nightmare. Stairs everywhere, strangers helping us carry Granny in, and no accessible bathroom. By the end of the meal, Granny was exhausted, and I couldn't take it anymore. We decided to leave before the party began. And that's how my sister's wedding became one of the most painful experiences of my life. Running forward in time, about a year after our Granny was getting very ill, and my awesome sis was pregnant, by November, Granny, now 96, was not fighting anymore, and I was at the hospital saying my goodbyes. Out of nowhere, my eldest cousin began to shout at me because of my sister, as if I was the one responsible for getting her there. This is why your sister doesn't want these people to come. Maybe they just freaking...
Is this the cousin that she was like trying to be like, I know you don't want this person around?
Yeah, maybe this cousin freaking...
But like being faced with grief like right in front of your face and like someone passing away, it's like, it's going to stress you out.
Sure, but this also happened at the wedding.
Misdirecting anger.
No, but this also happened with the wedding, where everyone was calling OP and like blaming OP for not being invited. So I feel like maybe just this family
Yeah, maybe they
I think the sister also but like seems like also the family. I told her to call her herself because I wasn't going to deal with her anymore. Her excuse for not being there was that her now husband was quite worried for her. BS. The day our Granny passed away, as she arrived at the funeral parlor, our father tried to hug us both. That being said out loud, don't get me close to that so that she doesn't infect me. That was me. As you can imagine, I could barely contain myself, but thanks to one of my mom's friends, I was taken away. Otherwise, maybe today I would have ended up in jail. A month and a half later, she was due to give birth, and when she got to the hospital, she didn't tell me anything. Neither her husband, nor our parents. But the next morning, my mom called me to berate me because I wasn't there. I lived 3 hours away, so it wasn't easy for me to drop everything and leave at that moment. I tried to explain myself, but it didn't mean anything because my duty was to be there and I wasn't. I talked to her, explained my situation, promising that I would be there for her during the weekend. She seemed to be okay with it. But then 2 days later, my SO received a phone call from her husband berating us because we weren't there, and his wife was crying herself to sleep over it. He accused us of awful things that weren't true, and at the end of the shouting match, he told us that from now on, we are not welcome at his house by any means. I had a panic attack, and my blood pressure skyrocketed. I ended up in the hospital because my nose wouldn't stop bleeding. Dang.
What? You can go to the hospital for that?
I mean, it doesn't stop bleeding.
What? I'm Googling that right now. That's insane.
The next days were dreadful. Every time the phone rang, it was some family member berating me because I was the worst sister in the world, too full of pride to swallow it and meet my niece. I cried every day and night for months. At the next family gathering, she made her grand entrance with her baby and put her in my arms so that I could meet her. In her magnanimity, she was the one who cared. I took the baby but couldn't even look at her. I gave her to my SO and ran into the bathroom where I had a panic attack. My godfather's wife saw me run and followed to help me back to my feet. She let me cry myself out, cleaned my face, and repaired my makeup. She was in my corner. She told me that she saw everything I did to try and make things right. That gave me some peace. Somebody had seen that I was struggling. From that day on, everything revolved around her and her baby. It seemed like she was the only woman in the world who had ever had a baby. What do you do?
These people, if they're going to continue to blame you for behavior that doesn't have anything to do with you, it's your sister. Like, I don't know. Stop.
I think you cut them out a little bit.
Stop feeling responsible for it. Stop responding to claims or calls for you to be responsible for your sister, and bring it up to them. Like, you know, I think it's usually better to like have a discussion or a conversation or a group text with the involved family members about like what you feel is being done wrong and like what should change. And then if nothing happens, cut them off.
Cut them off. Because if they're all behaving this way, it's just like, you don't need that in your life. You don't need to go to these events where you have a panic attack. If you're having a panic attack around these people, like every time you see them, there's nothing keeping you there that's good.
Prioritize your own peace.
Then the vid arrived. Since I live far away and due to the restrictions, I couldn't be with my family for over a year. It helped me to heal and to lose almost 60 pounds, so I was healthier than ever before. I was feeling awesome, more calm, more confident, more everything. The first time we saw each other again, I wasn't looking as bad as before. The moment she saw me, she blurted out, "Oh crap, you mother effer. You're so slim, I can't mess with you." That's insane of a thing to say. But I wonder if that's what she was saying, like, don't infect me with, you know?
Like nosebleed?
Oh, no, I was going to say like the body shaming stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You know, maybe that was another body shaming comment. Now that she couldn't do that, she tried to mess with me in other ways, like telling me what a bad mother I was because I wasn't forcing my little shy daughter to hug her or making my son call her auntie. He had started calling her by her name. He's smart, so he knew something was off. That effing behavior went on and on, body shaming me, making comments about my looks, and so on. After that, I decided to have low contact so I could manage my feelings and emotions and control my increasing lack of patience. And somehow I managed until last year. I decided to spend a short school holiday at my parents' house so my now teenage children could be with them. It had been a very long year with a lot of work stress. I told my father that this weekend I didn't want him to call my sister or anyone else. I just wanted it to be the 5 of us. I wanted to spend some time alone with them. That Friday, my son had a high fever, so I spent the night watching him and trying to keep his temperature as low as possible. At around 6 a.m., I finally fell asleep. Not long after, at about 8:30, my father woke me up to tell me that my sister and her children were coming for lunch. When your child has a high fever?
That's the best time.
Didn't she literally just say like, I don't want you to infect me?
Oh, it's
you
the best
will get
time.
infected. It's the best time when the child has 105 fever.
Adds a nice little zest to the meal.
I thought he was just messing with me, but nope. They were coming, and according to him, it was his house, and he could invite whomever he wanted, and he didn't need my permission. I was exhausted and argued back, saying that I could just take my kids and leave if he wasn't going to listen or care. I know I was too much, but I hadn't slept more than 2 hours and wasn't in the mood. But I stayed and tried to be nice. That night was the same as before, taking care of my son and barely sleeping in an easy chair. The next morning, one of my cousins called my mom. Her brother, my uncle, was very ill in the hospital, and they didn't think he was going to survive much longer. We ran to the hospital to be with him. He wasn't doing well, so after the visit, due to my lack of sleep, I went back to my parents' house to be with my kids. Now they were both ill. The next day, I decided to go back home so their doctor could check on them. On Monday, my husband needed urgent surgery, so my father had to come to my house to take care of my children while my mother was at the hospital with her brother. And I was at another hospital with my husband. While my SO was in surgery, my sweet sister called me sobbing and crying, knowing full well that I was alone in a hospital an hour and a half away from anyone, to tell me that my uncle had passed away. She was screaming, so I hung up. Why was she screaming?
How people do weird things.
Well, I'm wondering, is she screaming like out of like
I think out of
sadness,
just
or is she
distress. I
screaming
don't
at,
think she's screaming at OP. And if that is the case, what are you doing? Why are you screaming at her? She's got her own stuff in the hospital.
I had a meltdown and a panic attack. I called my mom and she got scared because she thought something had happened to my SO. As I later found out, she told everyone not to call me because my SO was in surgery and I was alone. But my sister knew better. She had a duty to let me know even when she was told not to. The rest of the afternoon was a blur. My SO was okay, but I wasn't. I was devastated. The days that followed were awful and things kept piling up. We lost another pair of grandparents, another uncle, a a friend of my husband, then one of my best friend's moms passed away, and then one of her sisters. Wow. It was a horrible year, but it was far from over. My niece's birthday was coming, and 3 days before, I had a very bad reaction to a medicine. I had to be in the hospital for 3 days with lots of digestive problems, but I made it and went to her mom's for the celebration. I was in a horrible physical state, so I could hardly eat anything, and my tummy became inflamed, making me feel even worse.
I see you. I know exactly what that was.
OP, I think this, obviously your family is being really, really awful, but I think at a certain point that you need to prioritize yourself and not go to these things. If you are not feeling well, don't go. You don't deserve to be treated poorly just because they say, like, you know, someone's having a birthday. You don't have to go. If you are sick, don't go. I think a little bit of low contact, maybe no contact with some of these people is needed. This mother effer began to mess with my looks and smirk and laughed and laughed. I told her that this behavior was not funny, that she was body shaming me, and that it was nothing to laugh about. I was fed up and left, exhausted, driving my 2-hour journey back home. So I decided to turn low contact into even less contact. Good. Last November, my father's mom, 95, was hospitalized, very ill, and not expected to live more than the next 24 to 48 hours.
Oh my God.
I packed my things and drove home to be there. The first day we talked, and she seemed genuinely sad and hurt. I told her that she didn't have to worry. I had her back, and she could do whatever she felt was best for her. We didn't have a wonderful relationship with this granny. She thanked me and left for her house. I spent the next 5 days at the hospital taking care of our father's mom. I called my sister every day to check on her and update her on what was going on. I was feeling great. It seemed like Granny's situation had brought us to a place where we could share as sisters and not as enemies. Miraculously, she survived and everything went back to normal. Wow.
Okay. Breaking the trend.
Yeah.
Let's
Especially
go.
the 95-year-old. Like, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
I called my sister to explain the situation because I had to get back home and needed her to stay in touch with our parents for their needs. She thanked me and then she started crying, saying she was thankful that we managed to get over our sister problems with her wedding. Then she said she had already forgiven me for everything I did. I was driving home and couldn't believe my ears. This mother effer had been effing me around for the last 16 years and she's forgiving me? I told her it would be better if she shut her effing mouth because 16 years later she was still reminding me of how she made my whole life and yet I was the one in the wrong. I told her to hang up and that we would talk later. I had to call one of my cousins to calm me down. I was in the middle of nowhere, driving, crying, and trying not to have an accident. It took me 4 hours to do a 2.5-hour drive. I hated myself. I was so effing a 46-year-old woman crying like a child in the middle of the road, sitting on some random pavement, breathless.
Dang. Okay, well, I will say, part of me is like, yeah, whatever, you just take that. She's like, I'm so glad we can work through the issues. You're like, yeah, sure, whatever, we worked through them. I don't care, you're an and 16 years of history is showing me that I don't want anything to do with you anyway, so go ahead and feel like everything's solved. I don't care. But then the other half of me knows that sometimes people say that one sentence to you,
well,
and that's all it takes. Like, they say the right sequence of words, and you go, hold on, I know you didn't just say that, right?
Which is what it feels like, because it felt like this whole story, OP is like, that's fine. I'm angry, but I'm just going to keep it in. I'm going to keep it in. And then she says those words, and OP's like, ah! Christmas arrived, and at the present exchange, she gave my SO a bottle of tequila. I thought, what a thoughtful gift. But no, it wasn't. It was a poison dart. At a certain point during lunch, she whispered so that no one else could hear that the tequila was from her wedding, that she had bought it for us, and because we left, she had kept it for 16 years. I couldn't believe what this entitled brat had done and said. 3 weeks ago, it was my father's birthday, now 74. While we were there, my parents told us that to celebrate their 50th anniversary, they had decided the best way was to go on a cruise. Just the 4 of us. Don't go on this cruise.
Do not go on the cruise.
Don't go on a trip where you can't escape. My anxiety rocketed. I told them I would look for dates because I couldn't think of anything better to say than a direct no. A week later, she came by my house unexpectedly, and as we were talking, she asked if I had already looked for dates. I couldn't take it anymore, and I blew up. My verbal diarrhea wasn't very coherent. I was sobbing the whole time and couldn't catch my breath. Oof. Dang, girl. Okay, again, your family. This is not your fault. You should go to therapy.
Yes. Also, yes.
Big time go to therapy. By the way, you should rush to listen to full episodes with stories just like this. Just go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app and search up OK Storytime.
Yes, do this and things will happen.
Anyway, there's a little bit left to the story.
Okay, let's finish it off.
I explained that it was my fault because through everything, I never told her anything. I didn't want our parents to suffer in any way, but I was exhausted. My mom told me not to worry about the cruise. She said that we needed to have a talk because there were things that needed to be solved, so she would find a date for it. So would I be the a-hole if I don't want to solve anything? Would I be the a-hole if I just want to have nothing to do with her?
So, to your family, yes. In reality, though, nah.
What?
Like, your family's going to be like, you and you're the worst, and you, blah, blah, you. But, like, in reality, you can just be like, nope, I've drawn my line.
I think
this person's not going to change.
I was gonna say, guess what? At the end of the day, it is for you. You don't need to do anything else for these people. So.
The only thing I was going to say is OP is having this conversation with her mom. Her mom said, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about this. I kind of think you should have that conversation. That isn't to say that you need to have any sort of contact with your sister or the rest of your family, but I think you should tell your mom what's going on. I think you could say, hey, this is how I've been treated. I have no desire to have a relationship with my sister. If that's what you wanted to talk about, I'm not here for it. It seems like your mom didn't say, let's have a conversation and sort out your relationship with your sister. She just said, there are things that need to be solved.
But that is the end of that story.
Is it for that, though?